All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be on page 201 if you want to follow along. On Friday, we started talking about the seven reasons as to why the Torah doesn't talk about Olam Haba. The first of the reasons we spoke about is because a person can't conceive, we can't understand what a soul is outside of a body. We only understand the physical world, and so we wouldn't understand even what a soul might endure in Olam Haba, whether it's reward or punishment. So we couldn't understand that. So that's why it's one of the first reason. The second reason we spoke about is because the Chachamim already put into place where we always talk about reward for Olam Haba, and so it's a very I'm not going to say the word, but I'm going to use the word in passive. It's a very word that's always used in passive, like you're going to get schar in Olam Haba, you're going to get schar in Olam Haba. So we understand that concept already, and it just doesn't go into elaboration over it. And today we're going to go into the third reason. The third reason is actually a super, super beautiful reason, and one that we can relate to from an early childhood. What is that third reason? The third reason we talk about is because our immaturity and our small-mindedness. And we're going to get into that now. The third reason, umehem, shaha'am hayu min ha-schilos umeot ha'avana. That the time when Hashem gave the Torah, since the Yidden had just come out of Mitzrayim, what happened was they were suffering from small-mindedness. They were in a really bad spot. They were not in a great spot spiritually, and they couldn't conceive anything that had to do anything other than what was in front of them. As evident from what is written in the Torah, we see over there that the Torah describes that the Yidden complained a lot to Moshe Rabbeinu. They talk about they wanted food, and Hashem gave them the man, and they wanted meat, and they wanted water, and they were constantly complaining. And they also brought the Egel. And so he explains that all of these different actions that the Yidden did, and all these emotions they went through, all because they suffered from small-mindedness. He will explain in a minute, they were immature. They couldn't conceive past what was in front of them. And so the Torah didn't write that and didn't talk about it because it wouldn't be fruitful. It wouldn't make any sense to talk to someone about something they couldn't even understand. He says, therefore Hashem spoke to the Yidden in a way that a father speaks to a child with love and compassion. And he explains that. What is that love and compassion? He says, K'moshe Kosov, Kinar Yisrael V'ayavehu. He writes in Hoshea, writes that the Yidden, you were a nar, you were a young lad, and I loved you, and I showed you love. So we're going into the explanation, and the Chavis is going to elaborate on this. He's going to show you why Hashem didn't discuss this, and for this reason is because he treated us as we were young children, immature, and we couldn't conceive the different concepts. And we get into it now. Here's where he goes. When a father wants to teach his son, we all know this, and in his early childhood, when his son is young, the father gives them instruction that how is he going to reach these great heights? How is he going to do all this? And he tells it to him like this: but the child at the time cannot yet comprehend these future benefits. You can't tell a young child, you're going to get all this schar in Olam Haba, do all this work, learn Torah, daven nicely, do mitzvahs, stay away from averos, and you're going to get schar in Olam Haba. It's too young. A boy, when you start teaching a child when they're 1, 2 years old, when they can start understanding, they're too young to comprehend and grasp the concept of reward in Olam Haba. They want something now. So he says, the father would attempt to encourage him. What does he say? Tolerate the difficulties of the discipline and the instruction, because through them you rise to treasured heights. He's telling him that go through it. But what does he tell him? the son would not be able to tolerate them. So v'lo shemei alav, and he wouldn't hear him. Because he does not yet understand the future benefits that his father is telling him. It's the same thing like the Yidden in the Midbar that was small-minded. But if instead the father promises him reward right away with something that he can enjoy, maybe a good drink, or a nice treat, a food, or malbishna, maybe new clothing, or mekevesna, a nice means of transportation, maybe a new car for his teenager. There's something similar. And the father threatens him. The flip side to that is also the father threatens him. If you do that, you're going to get punished. I'm not going to let you play with your toys. I'm going to take away your Hanukkah presents. Okay, I'm getting too much into my parenting over here. I don't want to put that out of the bag, but the point is that when you're a child, you can only be spoken to in a way that you can understand it, right? It has to be small-mindedness. Or he says Mirav, or he says the punishment might be, he goes, you're not going to get dinner tonight. Maybe it's a little bit more stringent today, might not fly, but he says you might not get dinner tonight. I'm not going to give you new clothing. I might give you a patch. But some similar to that, the Yeshev. At the same time, he encourages the child the logical reasoning that he's able to conceive this concept. And what does he say? He says, from among the tangible proofs of this obvious, clear evidence, if you do all these things, I will give you these treats, you'll behave nicely, and what's going to happen? You can be like Moshe Rabbeinu, you can be like a tzaddik, like a Rav, like a Rosh Hashiva. He tells him, look, if you go through the work, just like everybody else did. We're born, we're young, we learn these things, and everybody started from zero. And so you could also grow up to be a big Talmid Chacham, you could be a big tzaddik, you could be a Rosh Hashiva. He says, Yakel alav l'sibo yigias hamusar v'lasas torchar. Then it will be easier for the child to endure the difficulty of the discipline, because now he can understand it on his level, his or her level. Then when he gets a little older and gets a little bit more mature, and now the child who's an adult now can understand, or maybe not even an adult, but he's still young, but he mature mindfulness, he can understand really what this is all about, then he will be able to understand the true purpose of that discipline and also the value of that. And he will apply his efforts with that purpose of mind, and he will no longer apply his efforts with the mind to get a candy or a new or a prize or whatever it is. At that stage, the pleasant treats of the food and all those different gifts become less important. They become less valuable, and therefore, thus approaches the father through seemingly strict, because of his threat of corporal punishment, was actually compassionate. So the child learns later on that all that time that his father promised him prizes, promised him gifts, treats, or punishments, wasn't because he wanted to do all those things, but he wanted to learn what was in front of him because of small-mindedness. But now that he's an adult, he's more mature, he understands really what the concept is, what it means to be an Oyev Hashem, what it means to love Hashem. He can now understand. And so now it will be truly just for that and not for the prizes. Now the Rav Av explains how Hashem similarly acts. We explained this whole concept over here. So now he puts it back. How does Hashem treat this? We understand how the Father is. He says, so too Hashem, by describing the consequences in this world for people's actions, Hashem encouraged his nation with the promise of immediate reward and frightened them with the threat of immediate punishment. What happened? And when the Yidden went into the Midbar, Hashem told them, here, you can have the money, you can have this. And then he gave them the Torah. He tells them, if you don't do these things, you're going to get punished. Hashem did that because he treated us, we were small-minded. And that's why Hashem doesn't talk to us about Olam Haba in the Torah. Because we're too small-minded to understand that something that comes later in our life with maturity, with understanding. He did this because he knew that once the people became accustomed to this service, once they went through the stage of you got treats and they got also punishments if they did something wrong, or when they got all those niceties, and once they got past that and they got used to doing the mitzvos for the sake of the reward, now they learned Tiga meleim sicholasam bigmul ha'olam haba va'anshay. The small-mindedness and lack of understanding regarding spiritual reward and punishment in the world to come would leave them. V'chavnu ba'avoida elav, and they would then be able to direct their intentions in their service of Hashem toward the spiritual reward. V'yisnagu ba'adav, and would conduct themselves in serving Hashem with the goal of coming closer to Him. The ultimate benefit of Olam Haba, Chavos Havos teaches us, at the end of the day, we're not here to do mitzvahs to get reward. He actually says over here, he says, there's the Mishnah in Avos says, "Amanas lekabel pras." He says, "Al tikan kavadim hamshamshin es amanas lekabel pras." That he says, don't do mitzvahs and masim tovim to be like the servant who works for his master to gain a paycheck. Don't do that. Serve Hashem because you love Hashem. All these niceties, all these rewards that we talk about, you give tzedakah, you do all kinds of different mitzvahs, and you get reward for them in Olam Hazeh. Those are all the treats that your father told you when you were little. When you were very little, what we see is when a young boy turns 3 years old, the father takes him to the yeshiva, you put honey on the aleph, and you lick the lollipop. What's that about? It's to show that there's sweetness to the Torah. But that's the reward you show a child. We don't do that when we're 40 years old. Why? Because at 40 years old, we want to hope that we understand the concept that we're dealing Hashem because of the love of Hashem. And that's what he's saying over here. He's saying over here that the concept of the reward system and why the Torah doesn't explain to us what the reward system is on the is because it's not about the reward for mitzvahs. It's about bringing us closer to Hashem. And he says over here to achieve the goal is that Hashem deliberately not to describe the matters of the world to come in Torah. And he says over here, like a father treats a son. What does he say? While the Chovos Havos does focus on the Yidden that left Egypt, the explanation actually applies to every person in every single day. It says most people in the early stages of their spiritual development, they're unable to understand the concepts. And so what happens? We need those worldly aspirations. We need to know that if we give tzedakah, Hashem is going to give us back. We need to know if we do other mitzvahs, Hashem is going to give us back a favor so we can get through life easy. But that's not the goal. The goal isn't to get the reward. The goal is to get closer to Hashem. I picked up a book yesterday, very, very nice book, and it talked about, there was a story over there. There was a story by Nissim, a Sephardi Chacham. Not Chacham, it was just I forgot his name, Nissim. So Nissim lived in Eretz Yisrael. Nissim would travel to America a few times a year, and he would be gone for a month, and he'd go to collect money for his Moisid, and he would go also to spread Judaism. And on this one trip, he's getting ready to leave, and he has his 4 children are watching him pack up, and they knew what that meant. They knew that Abba's going to be gone for a while. So his kids started to cry. And he went over to his youngest child and he said, "Why are you crying?" He goes, "Abba, I don't want you to leave." So he says, "When I come back from America, what should I bring you?" He says, "Bring me back a candy." He goes, "No problem. I'm going to bring you back a sweet. I'm going to bring you back some sweets from America." And for the next child was crying. He said, "I'm going to bring you back a toy." And the child also stopped crying. His third child's little older daughter, he said, "I'm going to bring you back a pretty dress." He says, and she stopped crying. His oldest daughter kept on crying, and she couldn't stop. And he went over to her and he said, "I'll bring you back anything you want. What do you want?" He said, "Abba, I don't want anything. I just want you. I don't want a prize. I don't want treats. I don't want rewards. I just want to be close to you. I don't want you to leave." What we see from this is that it's not about the rewards that we get for the mitzvahs that we do. The bitachon, the mitzvahs everything we do every single day, the bitachon is not the goal. The goal is not to have full bitachon so we could be on easy street and say, "Oh, I have no anxiety in life." The idea of bitachon is so that we can have the ultimate goal of getting close to Hashem. Because, Abba, I love you, I want to feel you, I want to hug you, I want to talk to you every single day of the week. Don't go to America. Don't bring me back a treat, don't bring me back a toy or anything. I just don't want you to leave. I want to stay next to you every single day. That's the lesson that we learned today. That even though we do get reward for our mitzvahs, for all our good deeds, whether it's on Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh, the fourth reason why Hashem does not write in the Torah that reward is because it's not about the reward. It's about becoming close to our Father. It's about being able to sit with him as much as we can, talk to him, love him, care, and do everything he wants us to do and be the best children that we can be. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this day of Hanukkah. And today's shir should be Lilu Nishmas Menachem ben Yisrael Yaakov, Refuah Shalem Meshulam ben Sarah Rachel, Refuah Shalem Ruchama Rivka bas Rachel, and Miriam bas Sarah, also the Refuah Shalem. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and I love you all.